Hello there, welcome back to World of Warship Legends with Derka. During the holiday update, there were a lot of big and exciting things going on that kind of overshadowed a few buffs to the game, including those to the original Soviet destroyers, the Gnevny and the Minsk. Originally, these ships were very painful to play, most of us would agree, I'm sure. They really only let you do one thing, long-range gunboating, but the buffs have made them a lot more versatile and they're in a very good state right now. If you have not ground your way up to the Tashkent, like I haven't, now would be a very good time to do so, and this game will showcase why. In the background here, we earn a Kraken where we take down 4 out of 5 of the enemy destroyers on red team. So during the video, I just wanted to cover some of the buffs and how to play these ships with their newfound powers. So first off, let's look at the setup. Main battery mod. I feel it's a must with these Soviet destroyers because they suffer from a painfully slow turret traverse. It's near battleship levels at times. And in slot 2, I generally use propulsion mod to start and stop more effectively from smoke screens and from cover, but you could use the rudder shift to make yourself a more effective long-range shooter. My commander is Sergio. He's one of the Halloween 2.0 commanders that has a special skill that increases turret traverse, but you could just as well use Troops or Gurren. Personally, I chose Quick Fix, Look at Me Now, Perceptive, Sidestep, and rather be Torchin, as well as Vian and Sims for a little added survivability. You could use Bay for the concealment though. When these ships first dropped, the torpedo range was 4 kilometers, meaning that you really would only ever use the torpedoes in emergency situations, YOLOing enemy players, things like that. You would never have the option to stealth torpedo, but now you absolutely do. I think you would be missing the point of these lines if you used Bay Swirsky Gleaves to set up a torpedo boat, but it is an option. So in this game, I wanted to cover a few tips on how to play these things. In the case of domination, like this, I think the first thing you should do is have an escape plan if you plan to play a cap aggressively like we are. These destroyers do not have great concealment, so you have to be very careful when approaching the cap points at the start of games. You might consider not getting into the cap to start with. Honestly, I did because of the way that Shards is set up here in that mountain. I felt pretty safe from enemy cruisers and battleships. When positioning though, I always try to point the bow of my ship away from the enemies so that if things get hot and heavy, I can use my speed to create some distance between myself and the baddies. For starters here, I was not expecting to have 3 enemy destroyers around here, but we kind of just played it safe where we could fight one of them at a time, and we've been doing just fine. 2 of them sunk, and this fella, we're gonna get him pretty easily. Also, you noticed I kind of just sat near the edge of the cap, but again, I wasn't terribly afraid to do so because the support ships in the back, the battleship, there was only one, Julio Cesare. He wasn't in a position where he could really shoot me. Otherwise, I might not have sat right there. The next thing that I would focus on is not getting too close. And I might have been making a really bad example of this in this video. But again, it's just the way that the terrain is on Shards. I was using that mountain right there in the view to limit who could shoot at me, and I knew that I had a good escape plan if things went south. But with these Russian destroyers, you're really not the best frontline destroyer. For starters, you don't have that great of concealment. It's over 6 kilometers on this particular tier 5 destroyer, the Gnevny, which is about the worst at the tier. If you had a friendly, more stealthy destroyer in front of you in a cap, that would be great. We had a T-61 over here, but he took the long way around, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. We handled it. It was just fine. When he came around the other side of there, we had a good crossfire going. It was perfect. Now, I interrupt those tips to bring you this little bonus tip, and it's about YOLO rushing. When YOLO rushing a battleship, I think or a cruiser, it's very important to pay attention to how the ship was last positioned. So we had a Vian in here, right? 1. You want to make sure you approach the bow of the ship so that they can't sail away from you. The longer it takes you to torp and kill them, the more damage they can do to you. So this guy, we knew his bow was facing this way, so we approached from this side of the island. We also knew which direction his guns were last facing since he was shooting at our team up to the north. And yes, so approaching this way, his guns, he was only going to get 1 salvo off on me, and that is how you should do a YOLO. And it seems commonsensical until you die early and you watch some of your teammates try to do something like that. And you realize maybe not everyone understands how you should go about that. Anyways, okay, back to the other thing we were talking about, not getting in too close to the enemy, of which I have done a really, really poor job of this game. Now, these lower tier Soviet destroyers really don't have the best HP pool. When you're fighting enemy destroyers or enemy ships, you have to be selective in the fights you take. You can't afford to take a lot of damage. Now, with playing at range, you have 4 130mm guns on the Gnevny here, and they have really good range, 12.3 kilometers. Along with that, they have these really great firing arcs. It's really the exact opposite of the Americans that have very floaty shells. These are very accurate. They have good velocity, they fly good at range, they make it pretty easy to hit targets that are far away. Another reason to stay far away, not get in too close, is because of the turret traverse, which we kind of talked about earlier. That is one of the big banes of these ships. If you get in too close, you will probably not be able to stay on target because your turrets just can't turn quick enough. And again, you can buff this with main battery mod, Sergio if you were to happen to get him, things like that. With the buff, the reload on these guns has gotten pretty good. Gnevny, for instance, it is only 1/10 of a second slower than the Mahan. You can really put out a good amount of damage, and with that, using rather be Torchin or something like that, bringing up the fire chance, it helps with your ability to do long range damage to big ships like battleships such as the Julio Cesare here, and to deal with more heavily armored ships. If not sitting in the smoke screen, but I still wanted to keep shooting, we would have to keep our speed up. Speed is going to be your best defense in these Soviet destroyers. They are very, very fast. Minsk, for instance, is close to one of the fastest ships in the game with a base speed of 43 knots. Most captains are going to have a hard time hitting you if you're at farther ranges and cruising at high speed. If you have ever tried to shoot at a Kleber or a Khabarovsk, you understand this. You have to lead the target so much that they can easily make small little rudder adjustments and avoid incoming salvos. This sort of weaving style as a Soviet destroyer is going to help you avoid a lot of fire. And that's why earlier I mentioned, hey, rudder shift might not be a bad way to go. Definitely, if you're playing Kaba, you gotta have that rudder shift, but this video is really more about these lower tier guys. Now, main battery mod. Yes, it helps with the turret traverse, but it also cuts dispersion a little bit, and you can see here at long ranges, I noticed this a lot with the Fushin, which is a Gnevny class and Asian destroyer, that the dispersion can be a little bit wonky at long ranges, and you have a hard time being accurate. Maybe using Arleigh Burke, that could work. I don't know many people that really have Arleigh Burke leveled up that much, but yes, not having aiming systems mod 1 in that slot 1 does hurt the dispersion a little bit. Anyways, with the Fubuki going down there, that is our Kraken. And it's us versus 2 battleships, and unfortunately I'm going to have to sink them to win the game. Of course, with the torpedoes now, that is definitely more of an option than it has ever been with these ships, but one of the ships being in Arizona and the other one a Julio, YOLO rushing definitely is not going to be an option here, so I think the best thing that I can do is back up and hope to set up an ambush on the Arizona. I don't really know how much health he has left, but that's kind of what's going through my mind here. Once again, showcasing close range fighting in these ships that really are designed to be mid to long range fighters. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You know, if a game turns out like this, you just play with the cards you're dealt with. And I would say with these buffs, you're a lot better at it. The much faster gun reload, the torpedoes that have the increased range, the utility of these ships has definitely increased by a considerable amount. The torps, while better, they still only have a 6-kilometer range, so it's not ideal, not the best. You can kind of mitigate this by having enemy ships sail towards you. In fact, as a rule of thumb, having your stern facing most enemies you engage in the ship is a good idea. Going back to point 1, it gives you an easier way to escape. Just turn on the afterburners and use your speed to sail away. Aside from the battleship I YOLO'd earlier, all of the enemy ships I killed, I was ready to disengage and sail out to sea if needed. Now this guy smartly turned in right as we torpedoed, so we really didn't catch him with enough to get the knockout punch that I wanted. So now I'm desperately hoping just to get a fire set, and then if we can get a fire, we'll just disappear and let him burn down a little bit. Now Arizona, as tier 5 battleships go, it's one of the more accurate at the tier. And we saw there, I think he only caught me with 2 shells. And part of that could go to all of the dispersion buffs that we have on this thing. 4.5% for the camouflage, 4% for Vian, and Sidestep, which also increases it too. And I think that's a big part of these Soviet destroyers. If you're going to run and gun, using your speed, another thing, having these buffs to reduce your enemy's accuracy is going to help a lot. So we set a smoke screen, hoping just to get a couple more shots off. That 9% fire chance, I just needed it to come through right here and let me burn a little health off this Arizona. But seeing that we didn't have good luck here, we back up and try to get some torpedoes off. That might be the last tip that I want to talk about in this video. A lot of times you can manipulate enemy players, enemy battleship players, into turning or maneuvering, and you could increase your torpedo hit percentage doing this. And here is one of the simplest ways to do so. Enemy battleships kind of sailing towards you, put the torpedoes just in front of them, where they would be basically if they turned out. Usually most battleship players, 9 out of 10, when they see an enemy destroyer on the map like this, they're going to turn to try to get the full broadside to bear and do as much damage as they can. Well, when they do that, they are turning right into the torpedoes you laid for them, and since they're turning broadside, it's going to make them a much bigger target. You'll get more torpedo hits, yada yada yada, and that is kind of how to bamboozle battleships into eating more torpedoes. Now, back to our game. Using that same strategy, this was about the, I would say the last chance I had to win this game. I just needed to sink the Arizona, but unfortunately, kind of already by the time that I had gotten his attention, he had already shifted his rudder in, and he was going to miss most of the torpedoes. And that's okay. You know, we gave it a good shot, but with that, there really wasn't any way for me to win this game. Both of these guys had HE loaded. We were down to 1700 health. Yeah, that's pretty much that. So let's kind of review. Number 1, the biggest thing, have an escape plan. In these ships, have your guns ready, trained on where the enemy is going to be, and have your bow facing away, and get ready to escape. Don't get too close. These Soviet destroyers are masters at long-range combat, and with their slow turret traverse, getting in too close can kind of be disastrous. And 3, keep your speed up. These things are very fast, some of the fastest ships in the game, and you should use it to your advantage. And then those other little tips about YOLOing and bamboozling battleships, those are just little bonuses. Well, I do hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely go check out the Gnevny and the Minsk if you have not yet. They are very, very good now. I think they're in a good place, very competitive, and fun to play. Be sure to like the video, comment what you think about the Soviet destroyers down below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos. I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.